Hey guys, I'm Jim Bullock, the youth director at the Heights Church. Coming at you with our second virtual youth group as we're using social media during this time of social distancing. Hope you guys had fun with that game we played. Looking forward to see who knew the most about me. Uh, and that person is whoever had the best, whatever student had the best, is going to be posted uh, a shout out tomorrow morning. That way everyone has a chance to play. So tomorrow morning you're going to be put up on our story um, who won. So look forward to seeing who that is, as well as on Friday at 3 o'clock. You're going to want to come to our page. We're going to play Photo Scavenger Hunt, Quarantine Edition. So it's going to be different things you have to do around your house, pictures that you have to take, pictures or videos you take of you and your family, you and or your family. You don't have to get your family involved, but if you want to get your family involved, do it. There'll just be some creative things. The picture I post tomorrow or on Friday is going to have some prompts that you have to follow. Um, there will be different categories of the each photo, and the best of each of the photos of the category. A category is the photo, like prompt. The best person to respond to that prompt for each one is going to get a shout out and reposted onto our story, as well as the winner is going to get the championship belt. The person who um, gets the most, who gets done the first, gets them all in creatively. Don't just be like maybe like a picture of something and you just put a little bit of time into it and then throw it out there. It needs to be something creative. Um, if you show that you didn't put too much effort in it, you're not going to be the winner. So put effort in it. Take your time with it. I know it's kind of a race, but the person who wins is going to be creative. The one that's creative. So look forward to that. The winner's going to get of who gets them all in first creatively is going to get the championship belt our first night back. If you missed the last youth group that we had in person, I broke out a championship belt, which is just a championship belt from WWE, like a little plastic one. You'll get to hold that all night. As well with that, it'll come perks. Um, you're gonna want some of those perks. It's not gonna be like a high five for Jim, from Jim. It's gonna be like something cool. You're gonna want to come and check that out when we have our first youth group back together. Um, but I'm not gonna reveal what that all is now. Um, I, but trust me, they're gonna be good. You're gonna want these. All right. So last week we talked about fear during this time of um, being scared of what the outcome is of this coronavirus. Tonight we're going to talk about how God's in control. Um, and we're going to look at a couple or two Bible stories where God was in control. The first one comes to us from Daniel. The whole story is in Daniel 3, but we're going to look at 3:13 through 20. Um, little context is King Nebuchadnezzar had made uh, a statue, and he wanted everyone in the land to bow, like when they played the musical instruments, to bow down and worship it. Now, as people who um, were Christians or Jews back in that day, um, they wanted to worship. They were only worshiping the one true God. Um, so we're gonna, and so they didn't bow down. So we're going to pick up the story from where King Nebuchadnezzar is. They are brought to him. These guys are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Are their names? Um, so yeah, we're gonna take a look at that, starting um, at Daniel 3, 13 through 20. Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods, or worship the image of gold I set up? Now, when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, cithara, lute, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will rescue you? What God will be there to rescue you from my hand?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, "King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve will be able to deliver us, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and attitude towards him changed. He ordered the furnace to be heated up 7 times hotter than usual, and command some of the strongest soldiers to tie them up and throw them into the burning furnace. So these men were wearing robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, and were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent that the furnace was so hot that the flames killed the men that had tied them up, killed the men who were throwing them in, tied them up and were throwing them in. And so Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they were tied up and they fell into the furnace. Then the king Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet with amazement and asked his advisors, weren't there 3 men we tied up and threw into the fire?" They responded, "Certainly, your majesty." He said, "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the walking around the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the fourth looks like the son of gods." Nebuchadnezzar approached the opening of the burning furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and in their straps perfect, governors and royal advisors crowned them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor a hair of their heads were singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was not even a smell of fire on them. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angels and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command, and were willing to give their lives rather than serve and worship any god except for their own. Therefore I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces and their homes turned into piles of rubble. For no other God can save this way." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So a few things through that is they were faithful to God, and God took care of them in that moment. Um, God could have just put out the fire like that, like He could take our trials away from us. um, whether that be us dealing with the coronavirus or other things, um, the coronavirus pandemic or other things we have in our lives. Uh, so God didn't just put it out like that. Just like we had the coronavirus and this awful thing that's going on in the world. Um, we're in the fire. But what did God do? He sent Jesus. We're assuming it's Jesus because it said it looked like God and man or an angel um, in there. Just like he sent Jesus for us and and is there for us um, to walk alongside of us during this time. God is in control. And if we walk with him, we're gonna make it out on the other side of this better. Not to say that we're not gonna get sick and die, but if we do, we go to a better place. Um, and um, if we're strong and show that we are serving God during this time, we can reach people through our actions, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego reached King Nebuchadnezzar. Um, the second Bible story we're going to look at about God being in control is Mark 4:35-41. Um, this is um, the story of Jesus in the boat. Um, we're just going to go ahead and read it, and yeah, go from there. That day, when the evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let's go to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with them. A furious squall came up, and waves were breaking out over the boat, so it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care if we drown?" He got up and rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to the disciples, "Why are you afraid? Do you have no faith?" Then, they were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and waves obey him." So yeah, God's in control. Um, he was so at least he was sleeping during uh, the storm. Um, I find it impressive that I fell asleep during a Skillet concert, as you found out in the uh, the game we played earlier. But there was waves coming over the boat. I've been on a sailboat once for a week, and I got seasick on the very first day, and we were in pretty calm waters. So I could not imagine Jesus just sleeping. Um, and but Jesus, we, um, but he was in control. He got up and stopped like that and said, Why are you afraid? Do you not have any faith?" Um, so again, yeah, God is in control. And now we're going to talk about some of the applications. Why should we fear when God is in control? He's got this. We looked at a few um, passages before. There's many other stories in the Bible and in uh, more modern history about how God is in control and how um, He has a plan for us. Quick story about me and having to just trust about God being in control. Uh, you guys have heard this if you've heard my testimony, which I shared on our first night of youth group, which a lot of you hadn't come yet. So You guys probably haven't heard the story, or my whole testimony is up on our YouTube page, The Heights Church East Liverpool, I think is what it's called. Um, but uh, God is in control, and this is a story about how He was in control of my life. Um, in 2018, was September 2018 is what I call the worst uh, month of my life. Um, I just come home from camp. It was the first time I was home during the fall without going to any type of schooling. I didn't have when I got home. I didn't have a job, so I was working at McDonald's, awful hours, and I hated my job. I didn't see any purpose in it. Um, and I came home one day and found out that my grandpa, the person I looked up to most in life, was diagnosed with cancer. And that really hit me hard. And I kind of was like, I can't see how you're making this better, God. The other things that happened in my life, and it felt like everyone that was important to me was being taken away from me. And I didn't understand what was happening. I became angry with God, not knowing what He was doing. A year later, September 2019 came. I just kind of coasted through, got another job at a camp, just kind of coasted through the year, um, just one day at a time. Um, and September came along. It was a Thursday afternoon. I got home early from work. I forget the reasoning why, but I came home and I was off. I was going to be off that Friday too, so looking forward to a long weekend. When I got home, my dad let me know that my grandpa was sick or got worse, and that he had gone into the hospital and things weren't looking good. Then later that evening, he told me, or I found out about the Heights Church looking for a youth director, and that they were interested in me. Um, so God was in control. That whole year, I felt a call into ministry, but told God, let me be at home till my grandpa passes. Once that happens, I'll start looking for a thing in ministry. Um, it happened around the same time. I went and spent that whole week with my grandpa. Came home that weekend. That Wednesday night, I had a phone interview um, with the Heights Church, and they asked me to come for an on-site interview. Afterwards, I called my grandpa to let him know. Um, Around an hour later, he passed. Um, and although there was bad news, God gave me good news at the same time. He was in control of the situation. My grandpa's in a better place now and is worshiping um, in heaven and is no longer in pain like he was here on this earth. Um, in the same time, God was like, "All right, Jim, you said you're going to go into ministry when your grandpa passes. Your grandpa time's come for your grandpa to come home. It's time for you to step into ministry and to trust me." Um, so yeah, God is in control through that, and just continue to pray uh, during the time of being scared or whatever. Um, as we talked about last week, just continue to pray. Um, we're gonna have a few questions up on our Instagram story after this. Feel free to answer them, and there's going to be a place for requests again. Look forward to seeing some of your responses to this stuff, and look forward to seeing what you guys have from me on Friday. Remember, 3 o'clock on Friday. Come back onto this page. See you guys.